Here we have the Kershaw Launch 11. This is a relatively new knife from Kershaw. It came out a year or two ago, and this is actually my first auto from Kershaw. I'm quite pleased. I've been carrying this for about a week or so now, and I formed my initial opinions on it. First, I like how balanced it is. Because it has very light construction, the handle is monolithic aluminum, really. It does not have any standoffs between the two scale halves. It helps to make this a very, very light knife. And because the blade stock is a little thicker, I believe it's 120 thousandths, it balances perfectly right where your first finger and thumb go. And that is something I really, really like in a knife, is something to be balanced right where your main hold is going to be. In contrast, here I have the Kershaw Leek. Now this has been my daily carry knife exclusively for the last 4 years. I have rarely carried any other knife other than this one. This is my favorite knife that I have ever had, even though I do accept some of its downfalls. And as I was speaking about balance, this knife, it's very, very tail heavy. When I hold it where my thumb and first finger are, it really wants to drop. And you know, this is to taste, I should say. Some people might like that, but I prefer a knife with a little more even weighting. So the other thing to compare between these two knives, because I think the Launch 11 to me is just an automatic version of the Leek, because they're almost exactly the same size. They act in a very similar way. Spring assist versus auto, to me it's basically the same thing. You press a little button and things fly out. The main differences in terms of cutting are going to be the blade shape. The Leek has a modified Wharncliffe blade, and the Launch 11 has a drop point. The other thing is that the Launch 11 has a 90 thousandths wide blade, and the Launch 11 has a 120 thousandths wide blade, and the Leek has a 90 thousandths wide blade, which makes this one really good at slicing up things, especially because it has a hollow grind as well, where this is going to be a little more robust, heavier blade stock, flat grind. I can tell just by inspecting the edges on these two that this one even has a steeper angle to its grind than the Leek. So one more area that I would like to look at with comparing these two knives is the finish of the handle. Another one of the criticisms I have of the Leek is how slippery it is. I do love how sweeping and curved the lines are of this knife. I think it gives it an awesome look, but it also makes it very slippery in the hand, because the bead blast finish and those nice curvy lines, it just makes it really hard to hold. When you have good grip with your hands, it feels okay, but if you have really, really dry hands, or if you have really wet and slippery hands, I don't feel confident with this knife quite as much. This knife, on the other hand, with its hard anodized finish, it's very rough. Regardless of the conditions, I feel like I have a really good grip on this knife. Also with a little bit more of a deep cut there for your first finger, and the jimping on the back being a little more aggressive, it gives you a lot better hold. And not only that, but it's a wider knife. I do like how slim the Leek is. It makes it very easy to carry, but the extra width here just gives you a little more purchase. Now the final thing I want to look at when comparing these two knives is the carry clip. First, the Leek. Everybody knows that the biggest downfall of the Leek is the carry clip when carried in the tip-up configuration. Because they had to have the safety latch here, they could not move the carry clip any higher. Not only that, but it really was designed to have the carry clip on this side for tip-down carry. And because you can see just by the contour, that's what they were going for, or I should say that's what Ken Onion was going for. And this thing has fallen out of my pocket a dozen times or more, and part of that is because of how high this rides in your pocket. And I've got a pair of jeans here to demonstrate. that is very, very showy. And it so easily just gets grabbed. And not only that, the clip retention is, pretty slippery, again, from that bead blast design, that it just falls out constantly. So that is my biggest complaint about the Leek. Otherwise, it still is my all-time favorite knife. The Launch 11 carries a lot lower, not super low, but I think that is perfectly acceptable for a non-deep carry clip. And it also gives you a little more to grab onto, and you don't have to reach down into your pocket with your thumb quite as far to pull it out. So that's why I don't really have a strong opinion on deep carry or otherwise, is it just doesn't make a huge difference to me. The clip on this is a lot more robust in terms of how well it grips the jean material, but also with the coarser finish on this aluminum handle, that also gives it more grip. It does mean that it's harder to pull out, but I don't think that's too much of an issue. And finally, the last knife that I would like to compare this to is the Gerber Auto 6. This was my first auto, and I've had this knife for over 10 years, and I've given it quite a bit of use, as you can see. It's been through the ringer, and it's always held up. And this, to me, is what an auto should feel like, not because this is the be-all, end-all of autos. I really don't think it is. It's just because this is what I became so accustomed to. The button, the release button on this, is very proud of the scale, so it does not take much effort to release the blade. The Launch 11, on the other hand, almost feels like it has a recessed button, and you really have to push that thing in there to get the blade to release. I've gotten used to it a little bit now, and I think I found a happy spot in the button where it's a little more likely to eject the blade, but I still feel like it needs to be a little more proud, so you don't have to push quite so far into the handle and gives quite so much effort just to make the blade come out. This, to me, feels a lot more natural. The other comparison would just be how much recoil does it have when you eject the blade. This is a big, heavy knife, and I'll just hold it with 2 fingers here, and you can see that thing kicks a lot. The Launch 11, not quite as much. It did move around, but it came right back to where it's supposed to be, and that is just the nature of being a much lighter knife. This thing is a beast. So let's very quickly look at how much these weigh. Let's start with the heavy one. This is the Gerber Auto 6, and it weighs 6.9 ounces. Nice. The Leek, we all know, is a 3-ounce knife. Spot on. I wouldn't call this a lightweight, and it's definitely not a heavy knife. It's just a very medium knife. The Launch 11, I would consider to be quite a lightweight knife. At 2.2 ounces, you hardly know it's there. Especially if you've carried a heavier knife in the past, this will be like air floating in your pocket. So what is my conclusion? Do I think that this is going to replace my Leek? So far, I think yes. It is a lot more carryable than my Leek. Having auto versus spring assist is here nor there to me. The button is going to take some getting used to, but I think that will come with time. And I just think it'll be a much more useful blade in the end than the Leek. That's not to disparage the Leek in any way. As we all know, this thing is a fantastic knife. And it's just going to be a lot more practical than carrying something really big and heavy like the Gerber Auto 6. That said, I haven't actually carried this thing in a very, very long time. It's just kind of been sitting around. So with that, hope you enjoyed this, and until next time, see ya.